Coming up on this edition of Reel to Reel.
I'm Rebecca Drake. I'll show you what the Sisters of St. Joseph are doing to confront the issue of human trafficking and what you can do to help combat this modern form of slavery.
They were my friends. A local author recalls his relationship with Bobby, John, and Ted Kennedy. And putting God's words to music. John Michael Talbot is coming to the Berkshires. These stories and more are just ahead on this edition of Reel to Reel. Hello and welcome to Reel to Reel. The Sisters of St. Joseph of Springfield have been at the forefront of social justice issues since their arrival in the Springfield Diocese in the late 19th century. Their outreach to the neighbor in need is a hallmark of their legacy. In recent years, they have focused attention on the crisis of human trafficking. As Rebecca Drake now reports, the recent improved economic environment in Springfield comes with increased concerns.
It was an impressive gathering, but the capacity crowd that filled Montmarie Chapel on a recent afternoon was not there to pray.
What a stunning group. People from every walk of life throughout this area, from faith communities to law enforcement to government to diverse agencies and organizations coming together for a common goal to address human trafficking.
Sister Denise Granger, coordinator of the Sisters' Justice and Peace Committee, said her congregation has been focusing on the issue of human trafficking for the last 5 years.
This is our largest event so far, and our goal today is to continue to raise awareness about this very bad problem and to allow all the people here to network with each other.
The presenters at the forum included a nursing professor, the commander of the state's high-risk victim unit, a doctor, and a community activist. The first presenter defined human trafficking as a form of slavery where people are exploited for commercial purposes.
There's some exchange of something, with the victim getting nothing in exchange usually. Or compared to what the trafficker or pimp gets, it's a lot less.
The most compelling testimony was that of Nicole Bell, who was sex trafficked as a teen, spent 10 years in street prostitution, and after serving jail time, has become an activist in the neighboring city of Worcester, Massachusetts.
I spent many years homeless, many years in and out of incarceration, and as I said, I was arrested upwards of 30 times, and never once in any of those interactions with law enforcement did anybody say to me, "Do you want to stop? Would you like help? Do you want to exit?"
But when she formed a support group for survivors like herself, Bell's perspective and that of law enforcement began to change.
For the first time in my life, I was looked at like a human being, and like I had something of value to add to this world other than my body.
Springfield Police Commissioner John Barbieri says local officers receive training in how to recognize trafficking victims and to treat them with respect.
There's topics in regards to viewing the participants as victims and understanding that the vast majority of them do not want to live this life, and that, as mentioned here, they're not going to disclose, they're going to be discovered, and how hard it is to assist them, but how necessary it is.
Even professionals who deal with victims of trafficking on a regular basis gained a new understanding from the forum's presenters.
I've gained an immense amount of knowledge around what trafficking means, what it means to our community. I think that I've gained an opportunity to be able to see it from a different perspective and to see it through the eyes of somebody who's actually in it.
For Barbieri, a practicing Catholic, his faith provides yet another perspective on human trafficking.
Well, I think as a Catholic or as a Christian, right? Jesus calls to us to help the lowest, those who are in the most frightful conditions, to look at other people's plight and assist them. And I can't think of somebody who's in more need than somebody who's not only impoverished, potentially opioid or alcohol addicted, and on top of that, suffering from, being human trafficked.
While sex trafficking is the best known form of human trafficking, the largest percentage of trafficking locally is in forced labor. Both were expected to increase with the opening of the new casino in Springfield.
There's a lot of opportunity in Western Mass for labor trafficking, especially with massage parlors, nail clinics, agriculture. But we are at a location that's almost perfect because we have the confluence of Route 91 and the Mass Turnpike. The impetus for us to really step it up was with the casino coming to Springfield, and then the new Union Station, because a lot of human trafficking goes on at bus stations.
And at the recent forum, the Sisters of St. Joseph presented ways in which local residents can fight human trafficking in our midst.
You can read about it and become more aware. What the ordinary person can do basically is buy fair trade products, because fair trade products have their supply chain clean all the way down, so that you know that no slave labor was used in the production of whatever it is that you're buying.
Working together, all of us can help the sisters as they continue to unite neighbor with neighbor and neighbor with God. For Real to Real, I'm Rebecca Drake.
And Commissioner Barbieri encourages residents to contact local law enforcement if they suspect human trafficking activity. More about human trafficking and the contact for the National Human Trafficking Hotline can be found at iobserve.org. And we have much more to come on Real to Real. A former Elms College trustee and trusted Kennedy advisor recalls his friendship with Bobby, John, and Ted Kennedy. Alleluia. And putting God's words to music. These stories and more are still to come on Real to Real.
This is the air I breathe.
The Chalice of Salvation, your weekly spiritual connection. I'm Passionist Brother Terrence Scanlon, your Chalice host, inviting you to take time out of your busy days and join us Sunday morning. We welcome Bishop Mitchell Rosansky as our Mass presider and celebrate Catechetical Sunday. The Chalice of Salvation, Sunday morning at 10, right here on TV 22 News, and coming up next in the Berkshires on Albany's Fox 23.
Hello, my name is Bishop Mitch Rosansky, and I'm here with my friends from the Diocese of Springfield, here to address our young people of high school and college age, to participate in a way of asking questions, of inquiring about our Catholic faith. I know that all of you have your iPhones and different devices by which you communicate with your families and your friends. If you have any questions about our faith, go onto your phone to the My Parish app. You're able to get to Faith Time Q&A. And there you can send in your questions asking about our Catholic faith. Sometimes you may want to share your fears and your hopes, what you can do for the church and what the church can do for you. I'm very interested in hearing your opinions and your questions. What I'd ask you to do is to think of what you would like to inquire about in the Catholic Church. And as you ask your questions, do so in a spirit of faith and of knowing that we will try to answer as best we can. And so I'm very happy to be able to have this means of communication in reaching out to you, to our young people of high school and college age. You are the church today. Your enthusiasm and your energy helps to bring new life to the church. I welcome your questions, your insights, your reflections, as we seek to live out our faith in a dynamic way in a challenging world.
La Scala Santa, secondo la tradizione, è la scala che Gesù salì andando da Pilato, lì fu giudicato e condannato a morte da Pilato. in questo anno è in restauro. A partire dal 2013 abbiamo già restaurato la cappella del San Lorenzo, che è abitualmente usato come chiesa, e successivamente le 4 scale laterali che già si possono ammirare.
Ci siamo resi conto di quanto queste pitture siano funzionali proprio al messaggio che devono esprimere. Questo grazie alla pulitura, al restauro, è stato messo a fuoco, perché questi ambienti erano, diciamo, avevano perso la loro funzione di accompagnare il fedele in questo senso, perché le pareti erano scure, erano sporche, l'illuminazione mancava. Erano soltanto degli ambienti polverosi, un po' tetri, che non invogliavano il fedele in questo senso, e la pulitura ci ha permesso di ritrovare quelle tonalità, quei colori caldi, quel cromatismo che comunque inizialmente era stato immaginato proprio per questo scopo. Ed è bello vedere come tanta gente comunque apprezza questo, percorrendo gli ambienti già restaurati.
The difference in how the faithful and the visitor is viewing the sanctuary has been dramatically changed. Before, of course, people would mount the stairs, but they would not look at the images on the wall, A, because they were obscured by centuries of dirt, and B, because they were not properly illuminated. Now, with these glorious colors and professional lighting, illumination, all done through the consulting with the Vatican Museums, the faithful are actually more than looking, they're observing and studying these stories. And again, going back to the Bible, going back to the Catechism, going back to the story of the sanctuary, going back to the counter-reform, the doctors of the church, all these issues are now very, very clear.
You are watching Reel to Reel, your window on the world around you. Here again is your Reel to Reel host, Sharon Rulier.
This year marks the 50th anniversary of the death of New York Senator Robert Kennedy. Gerard Doherty, the son of a Boston firefighter and former chair of the Elms College Board of Trustees, was a trusted political advisor to Bobby Kennedy, as well as his brothers, President John F. Kennedy and Senator Ted Kennedy. Doherty's book, They Were My Friends, Jack, Bob, and Ted, My Life in and Out of Politics, gives a first-hand account of the golden age of the Kennedy political dynasty. Steve Kiltonick sat down with the author last spring before a talk at Elms College.
He was one of the few men who had the ear of all 3 Kennedy brothers at some of the most crucial and influential moments of their political lives. As the trusted advisor to President John Kennedy, Senator Robert Kennedy, Senator Ted Kennedy, along with Presidents Lyndon Johnson and Jimmy Carter, Gerard F. Doherty held a unique position in Massachusetts politics during the golden age of the Kennedy political dynasty. On March 15th, in celebration of St. Patrick's Day, the College of Our Lady of the Elms hosted a talk entitled An Evening with Gerard Doherty at a packed Veritas auditorium. Here, Doherty spoke of his recent book, They Were My Friends, Jack, Bob, and Ted, My Life in and Out of Politics. In the book, Doherty, the son of a Boston firefighter, offers a rare, first-hand, behind-the-scenes account of his unlikely rise to the top of the Massachusetts political leadership and tells readers of his role behind the Kennedy political machine at key moments in history. Doherty also details his efforts to help Presidents Johnson and Carter win the White House. Doherty's talk at the Elms serves as a trip back to familiar territory. He served as chair of the Elms College Board of Trustees from 1988 to 1995. Doherty is also the husband of the late Marilyn Doherty, who was a 1953 alumna of the college. Born in Boston in 1928, Doherty grew up in the heavily Irish-American wards of Charlestown. He attended Malden Catholic High Harvard University, and Wayne University. Dougherty was elected to the Massachusetts House of Representatives in 1956, representing the 2nd Suffolk District. In 1961, he graduated from Suffolk University Law School. Dougherty first became involved with the Kennedys in 1952 when John was running for the Senate. Dougherty supported Kennedy and helped in his campaign by gathering signatures.
There was some profoundness about him, and he generated esteem, so I did some work for him.
As the first elected Catholic president, Dougherty said Kennedy wasn't shy about his faith.
He was a Catholic, and he told you he was a Catholic. He also would tell you, I don't want people around me blessing themselves every minute, but I mean, I'm a Catholic, and that's what I believe.
In 1960, 4 or 5 months after being elected, Kennedy summoned Dougherty to the White House.
And he said, "You've done pretty well in the legislature." And I said, "Thank you." He said, "And you're smart, and you're pleasant." And I said, "Well, thank you." He said, "My younger brother, Ted, wants to run for office, and we have decided that you're the best coach and guardian."
As the chairman of the Massachusetts Democratic Party, Dougherty started to work on Ted Kennedy's election campaign. He said at first, politics didn't come easy to Ted.
Well, they all had different strengths, which made them successful. The one who was probably you or I would think would be the friendliest, the easiest to get to know was Teddy. And Teddy was at first very shy, but he had this thing that he'd talk to telephone poles. I mean, he loved people.
During the campaign for Senate, Ted continued Jack's ritual of resting in the bathtub at 2 p.m. for 2 hours. Dougherty recounts a humorous story where he and Ted were traveling through southern Worcester County on the campaign trail.
And Teddy said to me, "I'm exhausted. My back is killing me. I have to soak."
After 5 minutes driving, Kennedy told Dougherty to stop and knock on the door of a house.
Door opens as this guy who had pants on and an old T-shirt. "What do you want?" And I said, "My friend, Ted Kennedy, wants to use your bathtub." And he said, "You what?" He said, "What kind of a joke is this?"
Dougherty convinced the incredulous man that Ted Kennedy was in fact Ted Kennedy.
So Ted went in and soaked for 2 hours in the bathtub and come back. And then the next day, he sent the biggest basket of fruit to this guy, and this guy went into Worcester and told everybody about it. He had all this fruit from Ted Kennedy.
On June 19, 1964, Ted Kennedy was traveling in a small twin-engine plane with fellow Senator Birch Bayh and his wife, a legislative aide, Ed Moss, and Edwin Zimmy, the pilot. They were en route to Barnes Memorial Airport in Westfield to attend the state's Democratic Convention in West Springfield. Kennedy was campaigning for re-election to the Senate. The plane encountered visibility issues, went into a dive, and crashed in Bashista Orchards in Southampton, 3 miles short of the runway. Moss and Zimny later died from their injuries. Ted broke 3 vertebrae, 2 ribs, and had a collapsed lung. Kennedy spent 5 months in Northampton's Cooley Dickinson Hospital, confined to a special brace called a striker frame. It was while recuperating in Cooley Dickinson that Ted would discover his life's mission, healthcare.
That's when he got so committed to life care and how people could be helped. But once he spent 7 months in a striker frame where he would be on the stomach for 8 hours and put him around. And he decided that he was going to do something. I would say from the time he got out of the hospital to the time he died, his major consideration is how can we do better for people who have a health problem. And he created all of our health care as it is now.
In 1968, Doherty was asked to help Robert Kennedy in the Indiana primary when he first announced his candidacy for the presidency.
Bobby, on the other sense, was just intense. I mean, he had one focus. He didn't have any political friends, so it was left to me to hunt and pick and whatever we had to do, and he was very intense, very focused.
Because Kennedy wasn't attracting large crowds to the early rallies, Doherty said a different approach was needed.
Why don't you change your speeches from "I will do this"? Why don't you have the speech, "We together are going to do this"? And suddenly his approach took off. He wasn't arrogant, he wasn't remote, he was we.
Kennedy ended up winning Indiana in an upset. Before the next major primary in California, Doherty agreed to head up Bobby's New York campaign.
On the 3rd of June, my bags were packed. My wife and I went up and got in bed, put on the 11 o'clock news, because I was leaving the next day to go to New York and run the campaign. And it flashed on that he had been killed.
After Bobby's death, Doherty remained close to Ted and his nieces and nephews. The two remained lifelong friends until Senator Kennedy died in 2009. At the Doherty Talk, political consultant Anthony Signoli emceed the event. And Wayne Fanoff, executive editor of the Republican newspaper, served as the moderator. Elms College president Dr. Harry Dumais spoke of Doherty's road to success.
The achievements that Mr. Doherty accomplished were not handed to him on a silver platter. He had to overcome some long odds and some personal challenges to be where he is, to achieve the success that he had. And so in thinking about our students, I thought their obstacles would not be the same as those that Mr. Doherty had to overcome, but the way to overcome them would be the same. It is through hard work, perseverance, determination, and grit.
Dumais' wish is that students will be inspired by Doherty's life story. After the talk, audience members got the opportunity to ask questions. An evening with Gerard Doherty transported attendees back to a time of the mythical Camelot, when the Kennedy dynasty was in all its glory. For most, that made the night all worthwhile. For Real to Real, I'm Steve Kiltonic.
And They Were My Friends is available on Amazon.com and at Barnes & Noble. City of God, On Eagle's Wings, and Here I Am, Lord, just some of the songs written by John Michael Talbot. For more than 40 years, Talbot has put God's words to music and blessed the lives of millions of listeners. Talbot will be bringing his music ministry tour to the Berkshires this month. Kathy Harrington sat down back in 2017 with the Christian music legend and brings us this report.
There's a voice in the wind, can you hear it?
John Michael Talbot's music is more than a voice in the wind. It is his ministry.
Can you hear it?
So I first heard his work probably in the early 80s, mid to 80s, and I really loved it all, and he's done all kinds of stuff over those years.
For Father Frank Lawler, Talbot's music is the soundtrack of his life.
He represents what we all do. It's a journey. We're all on a journey here. We have different roads and different paths, and all we can do is walk with each other on this journey.
Okay, the next lyric is for we are his people. Reach out and hold each other's hands. Come on.
On this night, thanks in part to St. Mary's Parish, the Grammy Award-winning artist has journeyed to Westfield for a performance at Westfield State University. With 55 albums and more than 24 books to his name, Talbot's ministry has drawn people into a closer relationship with God.
Hallelujah. One last time. Hallelujah.
I listen to music before I go to bed, and it just relaxes me and it lifts me up because I know that God is there and I know He's looking after me and helping me.
Using Jesus' words, as in the Beatitudes, Talbot says music ministry is supposed to touch people. But there was a time when he took that for granted. all that changed when he spent time in solitude.
God really worked a miracle in my life, and the pretenses and all that stuff are kind of gone. So when I hear that God actually used my stupid little songs to touch somebody, I'm kind of like, wow. Has to be God, because it's not me, because I'm not that good.
We'll obtain everything.
I'm 63 years old. I used to really think I had some answers. I'm not sure I have any answers at all anymore, other than to pray more, pray for mercy for myself, for my sins, pray for mercy for the church.
After performing at 2 World Youth Days, playing for the Pope, performing at Catholic conferences in the U.S. and Europe, and leading parish missions, Talbot says he and his good friend Jeff Cavins realize now is the time to sound the alarm.
We are bleeding out people in the church in the United States. But the fact of the matter is the church is going to get small fast in the United States, and we're going to be like Western Europe. So that's where we're headed, and we've got to get comfortable with it.
Talbot points to Pope Francis and his call to Catholics everywhere.
I invite every Christian at this very moment to a renewed personal encounter with Jesus Christ. It's not about programs, it's not about issues, it's not about politics, it's not about Mary or the Eucharist or the Pope, or those are the kind of the conservative issues, or the liberal side, it's peace and justice. Those are all great, but they're secondary things. They flow out of that personal encounter with Jesus Christ.
Talbot's books and his music challenge people to live authentic gospel lives.
My job is to get on my knees and cry for mercy. And that when you do that, not in a selfish way, but in a way that recognizes your own ego, that I believe if we would all do that, I believe that would have spiritual ripples that would be like tidal waves across the culture.
While this troubadour for the Lord may be cutting back on his performances, he's embracing all forms of media to reach more people. You'll find John Michael Talbot on TV, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. For Real to Real, I'm Kathy Harrington.
And John Michael Talbot will be back in the diocese on September 19th to perform a benefit concert for 2 Berkshire Catholic schools, St. Agnes Academy in Dalton and St. Mary's School in Lee. The concert begins at 7 p.m. at St. Agnes in Dalton, and you can get tickets by calling St. Agnes at 413-683-0125 or St. Mary's at 413-243-0275. And a reminder that coming up on Tuesday, September 11th, the annual commemoration of this tragic day in American history will be offered at 7 p.m. at Holy Name of Jesus Parish in the Assumption Church, located at 94 Springfield Street in Chicopee. A light reception will follow in the parish hall immediately after the Mass, and all are invited to attend. And for this week, that's Real to Real. Thanks so much for making us part of your day. And remember, for updates anytime, you can find information and news on the Catholic Church, both here in the Diocese of Springfield and around the world on our news and information site, iobserve.org. We are also on Facebook, updating daily while our reporters work on stories for Real to Real. Check us out and friend us at Catholic Communications. We'll see you next week as we pay a visit to St. Mary Parish School in Westfield for another edition of Real to Real, your window on the world around you. See you then.
Real to Real is a production of the Catholic Communications Corporation, funded in part by the annual Catholic Appeal, and the support of you, our faithful viewers.